Guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom Podcast. I'm really excited about today's guest, Dr. Jay Zigmont. Dr. Jay Zigmont is the founder of Childfree Wealth. It's a life and financial planning firm dedicated to helping child-free and permanently childless individuals. He's also a CFP and he's a wealth specialist, and he's the author of the book Portraits of Childfree Wealth. And he also has his own podcast as well. And he got his PhD in adult learning from UConn. So that's, I was born in Hartford. So, and his work has been featured on major outlets, and I'm happy to welcome him to the show. So, Jay, welcome.
What are the odds that the two of us happen to, have a Connecticut connection and by pure luck?
Yeah, it's a small world. Yeah, you have a very interesting background. So tell people how you got started, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I actually come out of the learning side. So I got of coaching, and whether it's life coaching, financial coaching, career coaching, executive coaching, whatever. And you realize eventually that people are more interested in finances than they are their life, even though their life is probably a bigger issue. And I studied to become a certified financial planner. And when I did that, I found out nowhere in the literature whatsoever is there mention of being child-free. And that meaning people who don't have kids aren't planning on having kids. And my wife and I are child-free, and it was one of those things going, wait a minute, maybe we're weird. Maybe we're like the only people that don't have kids. But it turns out about 25% of the U.S. are child-free or permanently childless, and their financial and life planning is different.
It's quite interesting. And term my sister-in-law told me about, and it's called DINK. Dual income, no kids. And so kind of how being child-free in this in this idea of permanently childless is kind of very blunt, but how does it impact your financial planning process?
The way we say it is living a life of child-free wealth means you have time, money, and freedom to do what you enjoy. It doesn't mean you're rich. Like there's no you don't get checks just coming in through the mail for not having kids, but you have different choices. Where what happens is for people that are parents, there's a standard life plan. You go to school, you get married, you have kids, buy a house, you work 25 years, retire, pass on the money to the next generation. That is not what child-free folks are following. Child-free folks are, trying to figure out, okay, what life do I want to live first, then their finances, then their taxes, which is a bit backwards. I mean, you take some just basics. Bottom line, most child-free folks don't care about passing on money to the next generation. That's not a priority. Well, if you're going to do that, you can embrace die with zero. And if you're trying to die with zero, that's a completely different financial plan than if you're trying to pass on millions to the next generation.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I recently read this fantastic book. My wife and I, we actually choose not to have kids just because we value our independence, and we will kind of want to live our life on our own terms. But some people want to have kids, and some people, out of choice. And so what are some of the choices, or what are kind of the factors that influence a couple to not have kids? Of course, there's, issues, infertility and all that, but, kind of societal, cultural, why people are having less children.
Yeah. So if you break it in, there's kind of two buckets. There's the people that are by choice and people not by choice. Tends to be the people not by choice tend to use the term childless, and that could be fertility or not finding a spouse or a variety of other reasons. And the data says that's about 5% of the U.S. The recent study out of Michigan was looking at this in adults. And the other 20% of the population are people that are choosing it. And I did some research on this, and it's really interesting. Most people had more than one answer. So it was a well thought out process. So you were talking about that for you and your wife. You had a well thought out process behind it. Is that fair?
Yeah, exactly. It's more, we wanted to direct more of our time and attention. We can focus on our nieces and nephews, give back to other causes. Having a kid is like deciding to own a house, or, kind of that you're locked in for 18 plus years. And, for some people, that's what they want. They want to build a family, but others, they want to do different things and kind of enjoy life and have more freedom and choice.
Yeah. And that's what the data says. The data says that about a third of people are saying, look, just didn't want to have kids. Just just wasn't in the cards for them. Then there's others that say, okay, it's about finance, it's about health, about, not passing on intergenerational trauma. And then there's some interesting discussions around the environment, the carbon impact and the politics and these bigger issues that are really kind of, they're growing in reasons why people are choosing not to have kids. And then, there's always like people judging us. People are child free, they got to make them a judgment. Oh, you hate kids. No, well, about 15% of people just hate kids, don't want to have them. Okay. But the other 85% are like, hey, I've got a really well thought out reason why it's not right for us.
The other thing is, seeing my, brother and my sister-in-law and also my wife's, they, you have to, like I said, as they grow, almost, there was a startling statistic, it costs $100K per year for 18 years per child, and if you really want to, especially in today's society with, taxes, debt, inflation, financial instability, economics instability, if you really want to have your kids have a leg up and really succeed next generation, which is going to be really harder and harder, you have to be financially set. You have to have resources. And, this is something that's harder and harder. Some people don't want to have kids because they don't want, the way the world is going. They have a negative view of the world and climate change. We're having heat waves and droughts and COVID and all of this. So yeah, that's quite interesting. And then, but then like my family, I see them, they have to pay for their college and, all these tuition and classes and, it takes resources, which brings us to the next question is, one thing is, talk about, so here's the thing. And my wife and I would get this, does being child free make you rich? And you say no, but it can make you happy. So I'm really curious about that.
Yeah, so I ended up serving just shy of 300 child-free folks and asked them about their life, why they chose it. And I did like just an open question. Just, are you happy with your life? Just let them kind of go where they want to go. And it was like 94% said yes. And the people that said no, it was like, not because of choosing kids or not, but it's like, they have something going on in their life that's a big concern. But 94% of people being happy, that is an insanely high sample. When you're saying, hey, they're all saying they're happy, but the money is not true. So I'll give you an idea. So the U.S. Census looked at adults over 55, and they were looking specifically at childless people who didn't have biological children. And they found that single childless women had the highest net worth, but it was only like by a couple grand. Like it was not enough to matter either way. And I think part of my take on this is, if you're not trying to save for the next generation, growing your net worth to this giant amount is not a goal. I get to a point where I meet with people and, I'm a financial planner, life planner. I work with child-free folks, and I'll talk to them like, okay, cool. You're in your 30s, 40s, and you don't care about how much you pass to the next generation. Well, every dollar you earn more is going to an estate you don't care about. That's pretty stupid. Like seriously, I can earn more money, but for what purpose? And that might be the reason why the net worth is not higher. I think also the reality check is, child-free folks have, income disparities just like everybody else. For my book, I had somebody whose big success was they had moved from an air mattress to a regular mattress. And that was huge, for them in their life. And that's true. So it's not like, being child-free automatically makes you rich, but man, the data says it makes you happy. And I'm not recruiting people to be child-free, but it's just for the people that are doing it, they're pretty good with their life. How about you? Are you happy with your life?
Oh yeah, I'm actually, because financial independence, just basically independence, and for better or worse, I'm selfish by nature, but I kind of I have goals and plans that I want to achieve and accomplish, and it's quite interesting because there's this really interesting book called Die with Zero, and it's really interesting because we're taught to and consume. We're basically taught to hoard basically our net worth, and it's portrayed in the media, this idea of rich is you're driving Ferraris and yachts and private jets. And interesting thing is money is a resource. So it's only to be used here. When we die, we can't take it with us. So, what's the point of hoarding all of it? Because you can your estate, you can pass down to generations, you can use it for charitable causes, but then, eventually the government gets hold of it, they're going to take their fair share. So here we are striving, hamster wheel, saving, living frugally while we pay taxes. We're undergoing inflation. People are in debt. We have all this instability. The future is bleak. So why not use some of that money right now when you're healthy instead of just waiting till you're 70 and you can't really enjoy it. So this really ties to what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
And
I mean, a vast majority of child-free folks follow Die with Zero. Like that is a book that I recommend to most of my clients because he talks about the combination time, money, and health. And
yeah,
it's a good equation. And I think the hard part, though, is all financial planning assumes you want to save the principal. Even the safe withdrawal rate assumes you want to save the principal. If you're running Monte Carlo, simulations, assumes you want to save the principal. And it like breaks the whole system when you're like, no, I'm going to live my life throughout my life. And the other part is a lot of child-free folks don't really have retirement as a goal. They might have a hobby or a business or small business they're doing or something. If you're not going to retire and you're not going to pass on money to the next generation, like the whole financial planning system blows up.
It's actually a really good book because the whole financial planning is based on income and status. I'm not saying income is very important. You have to make a living. You have to be productive. You have to be saving. It sucks. It sucks to be broke and you can't pay your bills and you can't do things you want to do. Naval Ravikant, he wrote this really fascinating. It was really great. It's talking about focus on using money for time and wealth, not for income and not for status, which is what the modern mainstream wants us to think is income for status. What is your net worth? What kind of car you drive, what neighborhoods, all of that. Those are important, but there's something deeper. And then what's interesting thing is this idea of this. You have this. What is the file? I've heard of FIRE, but you talk about file. What is that?
All right, Christopher. So everybody knows FIRE, financial independence, retire early. Let me ask you a question. Are you really going to stop working throughout your life, or are you just going to keep always doing a little like whatever side gig, fun thing? I mean, like what you're doing now. You tell me.
Yeah, well, I tell this story to my clients. I fully retired in 2016, which is seven years ago. I could do whatever the F I wanted to do, and I took a year off, traveled, ate at expensive restaurants, stayed in nice places, and it was great for the first month, but for the next 11 months, it was hell. So we have to have this like passion, this purpose, and like I said, now I'm doing what I love to do, and I'll never retire. I can do this all day. I can do it for free as well. So it really doesn't make any difference. It's more of the people I'm helping and impacting. So, that's the answer to your question.
Right. So if you take that and combine it with the Die with Zero approach, you get FILE. So essentially the way we look at it is FIRE is an on-off switch for work. FILE is setting the dial back, just a dimmer switch of saying, I want to do the right amount of work at the right time, at the right speed for my life. And here's the thing. If you take out retirement and you take out passing on the next generation, you can invest in yourself differently. I have people that in their 30s could go, you know what, I want to go back and do a different career. So, all right, you talk a lot to physicians. So let me give you an example. I worked with somebody. I used to work in healthcare and then burnt out of healthcare, and you know what it's like in there, so you probably get it. But I worked with somebody who's a medical resident in his last year of residency, doing okay, but not great. I was often coaching these residents who were struggling, working through the boards and all that. And he was doing okay, not great. And I talked to him. I said, "What's going on?" And I met with him for about 6 months, and come to find out, his parents wanted him to be a doctor. Okay? He never really wanted to be a doctor. And his parents paid for the school, and he went to the school, and he did fine, and he was doing okay. Probably not the person you want as your doctor, but fine.
Yeah.
And I said to him, listen, are you happy? And he's like, no. What would you do if you could do anything? And his answer was he wanted to do something in art. He was an artist at heart and who got, went to medical school, graduated. I mean, he's last year of residency. And I said, okay, well, what would your life look like if you followed your passions, all that? So I saw him about a year or two later, and he was happier than ever. And I'm like, what happened? He goes, well, I quit being a doctor and went to art. He says, my parents are really mad at me, but I'm happier than I've ever been. Yeah. That's that investment in yourself that is part of that FILE approach of saying, hey, what do you enjoy? I call it Marie Kondoing your life. Find the stuff that brings you joy and get rid of the stuff that doesn't. This person I'm talking about, look, he's happier. He's an artist. He's not making good money. I mean, let's be real. Artists don't make a lot of money. You might make $45,000 a year, but happier. And that's a hard choice in our society to say, yep, I'm going to give up being a doctor to go be an artist. But what brings you happiness, what's better?
And plus, like like I know, like a lot of my surgeon friends, they make 800K a year, but they come home to an empty mansion, and they can do whatever, they can afford whatever they want, but their wives, they're on their third divorce. Their kids hate them. The some of them are into drugs, alcohol. So like I said, like there's like a certain point, there's a certain salary where it's like, where you're comfortable, you're doing what you want to do. Of course, if you're enjoying that, then by all means, but it's like again, it's not all about income and status, and which is quite interesting. Yeah, I know that. I know that story. The typical story: your parents want you to become a doctor. What's interesting is that we have to sacrifice, just to please our spouse, and it's just an endless rat race. Yeah.
Well, and I'll give you a funny example of this. So, my sister and I, same Christmas, I finished up my PhD, and my sister announced her first kid. My wife is a little bit of a wise guy, and she's also a PhD, and she asked, "Which are you more proud of? Me getting my PhD or my sister having a kid?" Christopher, I'm not going to give you the answer because I don't want to throw my mother under the bus, but you can see where this is going. And it's funny when you start seeing these expectations. We call it the standard life plan, and it has such a pressure on you. And once you get rid of that life plan, you can do whatever you want. You get to a point, and you're probably pretty close. It sounds like you hit it already, of what we call the child-free midlife crisis. You hit your personal, professional, financial goals, and then you're like, now what? If you're a parent, you pass off your goals to the next generation. If you're child-free, it's like, what life do I want to live? And that's a challenge. It sounds like you hit it, and it was only a month into your retirement.
It's quite interesting because I did this experiment where it's like, where I did this month-long experiment where it's like you really hustle and you try and achieve a particular goal. And at the end of it, it's like, once you do that, it's like, and then you start finding things to be unhappy about. Like you start comparing yourself to bigger influence, bigger followings, or, instead of celebrating the small wins, you start thinking, oh, I should have you start getting greedy. You start becoming ungrateful. It's kind of this, and you have to really catch yourself. And the other interesting thing is, there's this 2% withdrawal rate or something. I really didn't, but it's like you work so hard to either save or invest, $1 million. And then when you get to quote retirement age, you can only withdraw 2%. So you're gonna live on
4% usually, but yes.
Yeah. So you're gonna live on 20 to 40K a year. So you work so hard, you achieve that, and then you can only withdraw that amount. It's kind of like, and then the government's taking it, your advisor's taking it, inflation, taxes. So it's like you have nothing left over for yourself. So it's kind of just ironic, just when you take a step back and look at things.
So watch this. You bring up your advisor. So I'm what's called an advice-only planner. So I charge for my time and just on a subscription basis. I don't do percentage-based. But if you work with a percentage-based advisor, their goal is for your net worth to always go up. And you said your goal is for your net worth to go down.
Yeah,
it's a built-in conflict of interest.
Interesting. So I really enjoyed this conversation, sharing stories. How can people contact you? I know you're on social media. Check out your book, check out your work, and so on.
Yeah, so our website is childfreewealth.com. You can actually download a free copy of the book, childfreewealth.com/book. On all the socials, Child Free Wealth and Child Free Wealth Podcast. So if you haven't guessed something having to do with child free and wealth, that is probably how you find me.
And for all the audience out there, I really hope you enjoyed this conversation with Dr. Jay Zigmont. Just talking about different perspectives, thinking about retirement in different ways, saving. I'm always interested in people with different perspectives. And all of his resources will be in the links and show notes. And with that, thanks so much for coming on to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.